Um,
Okay.
yeah, I think the question that I still have, which I don't know if anyone can really answer, is how often to wear them, how long to wear them. Um, it's kind of uncharted territory as far as
And in which situations? Like,
exactly.
should you sit or can you lie down and having it? Because it will be a comfort,
Yeah.
but you're actually not doing anything. So,
I think that, from what I understand from Leonid and his TAT course and everything, you would think that it would be, you want to wear it as frequently as possible, right? He has the kids that he works with have these things on basically 24/7,
yeah,
um, which would make sense to me. Um, it is still hard to abandon the thought process of, you know not specifically the muscle thing, but just the thought process of, well, if I do it too much and my body doesn't learn to do it itself, then will I
I
be
understand.
enabling something, and
Yeah,
um,
you're right. You're right. You're right.
you know,
You're right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
and I don't even think of it necessarily, like I said, I don't think of it as muscles getting weak anymore, right? I don't,
Hmm.
but there, if you take the muscle thing out of it, there's, I think, the question of, is there a way to self organize your body or your patient's body without these things or in conjunction with these things so you can wean somebody off of these things quicker? Or do you need to wear these things frequently and for a long enough period where they'll, you get the fibroblast kind of stimulation, which from what I understand takes months, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Now you touched now I think I understood what you said in the beginning, or what you said because of what you said just now. I was I I was still thinking about how can I make the other muscles work, the internal muscles work, and it's not about making muscles work, as you said.
Yeah.
Yes, now I get it. It's about waking up the fibroblasts that are dormant,
Yes.
and they need that mechanical compression to in order to be. You're right. You're totally right. So yes, I agree with you. Wear it as
which
long as
which
you
if that's the
can.
case, then you'd want to wear this as often as possible.
Of course, of course, of course, of course, of course. Totally, totally in agreement with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We
I
keep
had a
falling back on our, yeah.
I had a I've been thinking recently, well, about multiple things, but sorry, I'm just pulling up this note that I wrote the other day.
Yeah.
Um all right, I'm just going to read a few things and see if they make sense.
Okay.
So, okay. So, tensegrity tells us everything is torsional, everything is helical,
Hmm.
and involves the flow between impansion and expansion. For this to happen, the skin, which is the external barrier, must be strong enough to withstand the root system, aka, what we have in our mapping of the fibers, um, which I guess you can even just think of it as the root system is the tensional system, which is pulling things together.
Yes,
Because
in the
if you
Gaberto's
it's
model,
like you
yeah.
see the skin, you see the fibers, right? But what are the fibers doing? They're pulling things together, which if you just keep going at a smaller scale, at some point you just reach the point where there's some form of bond or energy that is trying to pull things closer together.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in that smaller scale, you can those pulling elements become also compressive elements because they interchange
Yes,
depending
yes,
on the
yes,
scale that you see. So it would be like seeing the bones as the compression elements and it depends on the scale that
yes.
you I understand. Yes.
So the skin barrier must be strong enough to withstand the pulling on it from within, and it also must be strong enough to withstand the pushing into it from within. So from within, the skin must be able to withstand the pulling and the pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, impansion flows are delivered through the skin folds. It is the vortex of energy that causes the deformation of the system. So I wrote these the other night, so this is the first time I've read them since I wrote them. It redirects the forces back outward. Thus, the energy can be kept within or sent back out into the environment. So the way I was thinking is the skin folds are the manifestation of the uh, tension of what's within pulling on the skin. It's the manifestation of that overcoming the structure and causing the structure to shape change.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you have it's kind of like if I'm sitting here and somebody comes behind me and pushes me and I fold forward, it's the force of the push, the internal tensional pulling is taking that force and receiving it and pulling it within. Whereas if somebody came behind me and went to push me and I resisted that push, I knew it was coming and I resisted, I stiffened my structure, then the opposite would happen. Instead of the internal me pulling in, the internal me would be pushing back out, which again, we all know, I'm just putting in a different
Mm-hmm.
context. All muscle contraction is tension manifesting in the direction of where my body is in contact with the environment. So right now, if I'm sitting on this chair, my butt's on the chair, if I go to raise my arm, the muscles in my shoulder are directing tension not towards my arm, but from my arm through me into the chair. Another thought. In order to move forward through space as a human, one side of my body must compress and slow down and move backwards as the other side projects forwards.
Can you explain it again?
Yes. Okay. So,
I understood your words, but
yes.
can you explain it as if
Yeah. So if I get up off this chair and then step forward, as soon as I start the initiation of walking, um, one side of my body has to compress. Things that side of the body, things have to come together. Impansion, which because everything is helical, will cause a torsion through that side of my body. That torsion brings things together, right? But it also moves that side of my body kind of in the process of the compression and the torsion. that side of my body is, you could think of it as either being moved or held backwards, which allows the opposite side of my body to move forwards.
Hmm. Um, Last week we had the discussion with Steve where he presented his CKC
Yeah,
movement,
I watched it after, yeah.
and it talks exactly about that. What initiates movement, and the conclusion for me was, how do I initiate movement? I reconfigure in a way that my center of mass is hit by gravity.
Yes.
So there's a momentum and I start falling, so I move. And then how do I move? I keep reconfiguring.
Yes.
Just to see if I understood what you said, because that's what I understood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How I initiate movement, I reconfigure in that specific way. I reconfigured by impanding my backside, expanding my the side that is
Yes,
coming
yes.
forward, causing it. Is that you're explaining the reconfiguration?
I am. So let me elaborate a little bit. So I think that any movement of our body requires a reconfiguration, and that reconfiguration involves either impansion or expansion, you know, not universal, like in specific regions, right? Now, what I'm about to say is me finally, I think, bringing my background in the postural restoration into this. So um, we have two sides of our body, right? And the way we're taught in school and et cetera is that both sides are the same and symmetrical. However, what I've learned through postural restoration is that, and then kind of, which has led me on to also dig deeper, is the two sides of our body are the farthest thing from the same. They are very asymmetrical, and us humans have a a natural pattern where the right half of our body is not only heavier from a mass standpoint, but the global tensegrity structure of our body has a helical twist that's innately a little bit to the right. Okay.
Did you say so? Okay.
Yes. And I can show you, you know, in further discussions in the future where this research
Yeah.
shows. But
Okay. Okay.
the mass thing comes from, if you look at the organs in our body, the right side of our body, the organs are larger and have more weight than the left. And one of the chief kind of causes of the helical asymmetry is the diaphragm, the right side of the diaphragm, because it sits above the liver, which is on the right side, not the left. The right side of the diaphragm is more domed.
Mm-hmm.
The left is more flat, and the tendon of the right diaphragm travels down further along the spine. What I now know from this whole everything pulls towards the surface we're standing on, what I now realize is that just means that you have this pathway of tensional pull that goes down through your spine, down through your right side of your body into the ground, that's a stronger pull than the left. That causes the pelvis to get pulled and twisted to the right, and it causes the rib cage and the neck and the head to want to go back to the left. It creates a torsion.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that means that the right side of the body, without me doing anything, the right side of my body if you think of the tensegrity tower, if you push the tensegrity tower down, just picture you have a tensegrity tower that's two towers that's connected, and you took the right one and pushed it. And because you pushed the right one down, the left one does this. Okay. Now, walking forward is the exchange of one side doing that as the other side does this, and then back and forth. When one side does this, that side compresses, it causes the body to twist in a certain direction, but it means the side that's doing this consolidates and it actually is held back as the other side kind of moves apart and advances forward, and then that foot hits the ground, and then that side consolidates, and the whole body, particularly through the spine, it's this constant twist. So it kind of makes sense to me now why that asymmetry is so important, because it means that there will always be a natural tendency to be able to kickstart that forward movement, because one side will kickstart it for you. If you have an asymmetry, all you really need to do is let yourself fall forward, and that asymmetrical,
it will be shown.
That asymmetrical mass will coil one side and kickstart that movement going forward. Now, what
so Pierre, can you explain the counter rotation that happens on the waist and the pelvic girdle and
yep. So
with that sense of expansion, I understood it, huh?
Yes. So if you sit in your chair and you have your feet on the ground, all right, and you just push your right foot down a little bit, and as you push your right foot down, pull your right hip back a little bit. Now, do you feel how your pelvis just kind of turned to the right?
Yeah.
And do you feel how your right abs kind of create some tension?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now come back to the start and put your hands on the ribs here. So when you push your right foot down and pull back, do you feel how your right ribs compress a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening there is the pelvis and the lumbar spine are being twisted to the right, and the rib cage is like a spring is compressing, and the rib cage, when one side of your rib cage compresses, where the ribs in kind of connect with the spine, it causes the thoracic spine to counter twist.
Okay.
It's a giant coiling of the spine, and that coiling goes all the way up through your head.
Yeah.
Now
that can actually counter rotate also in relation to the torso, to the thorax.
Exactly. If I keep doing that and I keep coiling, you see how my shoulders will naturally start to turn. And that's what Stephen talked a lot about, the spinal engine. Grekovetsky's work, he shows the guy with no legs and no arms walking. In Grekovetsky's book, he talks about how the spine is what drives everything, and the spine, that counter twist. So, PRI talks about how PRI often talks about the neurological pattern of this, right? And how we get into a state where, because it's easier to be in that right coiled state, excuse me, we habitually do everything from that state. I reach for my cup of coffee and I drink and I do this. Everything kind of, I'm predisposed to being over to the side. And they talk about, because modern living is so habitual, that the body starts to get twisted and torqued, and it's hard to get out of that right side. And I know that there's a neurological component. I know that there's a memory component to this. But what I've been realizing recently is that when the body loses tension, it's kind of the video you just showed where he loosened and the tensegrity structure collapsed. Well, it collapses and twists in the body, because one side is heavier. It will always collapse towards that side. So the body will always collapse towards the right side. Okay. And what I've observed in people that I work with is that fits into two patterns. One is the body collapses towards the right side, and you'll see somebody with the right side visibly more compressed than the left. Mm-hmm. Or the left side of the body will start to literally collapse into the right side. I've never seen the right side collapsing into the left. Everything is, both of those scenarios are when the structure as a whole collapses in the direction of that rightward pull into the floor.
And in case of scoliosis, for example, like there can be multiple curves.
They can be multiple manifestations, but the center of mass, predominant right pattern, it will fit into one of those two categories, where it's either kind of like what you just did, which is the right side of the pelvis and spine going back. They'll either be like this, right? This accentuated curve, or they'll be a leftward collapsing, but being smushed into the right side.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, so what PRI does, and what I've been doing for years until I got into what we're doing now, is basically try to rebalance that pattern. Try to get somebody to be able to go center of mass over to the left, compress over to the left, decompress the right side. And it works fantastic, but I reached a point where there's a lot of people where it wasn't working the way I expected. And now through biotensegrity, I realize it's because the system as a whole doesn't have the tensional support to support that. However, what I'm thinking now, which is interesting, is just like we're finding ways to improve the distribution and improve the tension and everything, I'm now realizing that the PRI kind of exercise approach is very useful here, because every PRI technique, tries to get from the cranium down through the foot, the left side to compress and the right side to decompress. Now, you could take that and flip-flop it, and you could just do the same thing but opposite and do the right side. And what I'm realizing now is those techniques we can use those techniques to rebalance tension in the system, because what you're doing is you're taking one side of that tensegrity tower and you're compressing it. Now, that compressing of one side is delivering tension into that side from the inside pulling on the skin,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I do this thing in the chair that we just did, and I could even like add pieces to it, which I could go into, in the future as far as how to take that all the way up to the head. But it means the right side internally is pulling on the right side and just feeding tension and condensing everything. Now, what's super unique about these techniques is when I do that on the right side and then I add respiration to it. So if I breathe all the air out and the right side gets super condensed, if I keep that, so watch this, and then I breathe in,
Yeah.
it forces the opposite side to open, and I'm feeding tension into the other side from head to toe in the inside pushing out into the.
Yeah.
And so and you could take this even further in terms of the skin folding. And what I've realized is these techniques that I learned through PRI, they have a whole new meaning with the skin folding, because it's like, okay, when I compress one side, I'm funneling into the groin fold, I'm
Mm-hmm.
funneling into the abdominal fold, I'm funneling into the shoulder and scapula, I'm funneling all into specific folds on one side and letting the other side just
Mm-hmm.
explode.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah,
anyway,
you don't say that you're compressing the right side, you're impanding because it's
right.
a different thing, it's a different quality. Uh, um, I'm gonna write something for you to see on Instagram. The guy's called let's go like so. Amat on Instagram. The guy is a circus performer, like weird, and he does handstanding with those flagging the body to one side completely.
Oh wait, this is what you sent in the WhatsApp the other day.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Check the guy when the guy is standing and he places one hand on the ground and he starts the one hand um, handstand from the ground. So he does exactly what he described now. There's an impansion on the side where he supports himself. There's no momentum there, no momentum at all. What I see is that he focused so much energy into that impansion side, and I see the mesh there, the super stability system there,
Yeah,
super
yeah, yeah.
intense. So there's no muscle up of the action. Um, and I hear you describing your description, and it reminded me again of that extreme performance that I'm trying in myself, in my
Yeah.
modest possibilities, to see where can I where can I support myself, where can I impand myself inside and nourish that impansion place, which is not a point, it's a place from where I can move out of my base of support. So I go into very weird
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
leg standing positions and I circle with my arms and my legs and very slow, focusing myself on that place where I feel and I see those things. And I can change, like if I'm standing in one leg, I can change from my uh, side, my hip, my waist to my ankle.
Yes.
I can see the same action inside the ankle. I focus the impansion there, and it's there that everything happens, and it becomes so.
I've been doing the exact same thing literally the exact same thing. And what I found was when you focus on the ankle
Mm.
and you focus on the impansion happening at the ankle, it feeds into upstream and into this pattern that we're just talking about. And that when I'm impanding through the ankle, it automatically impans through the groin and this, and it's just it's giving me a different focus. And at the end of the day, it kind of like, I just lost my train of thought, but it kind of it allows you almost to have an infinite exploration where
Yes.
you can pick any fold site, and you can even get more specific in terms of any angle. And if you just focus on, you know, impanding in that specific vector of that specific fold, and then you could combine that specific vector of that fold with that specific vector of that fold. And so what I'm finding is like, I have part of my movement practice, I would say 90% of my movement practice is this, just exploring these different things, which is like, it's kind of, if on one end is like a pattern and the other end is chaos, it's kind of like over here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's exploring the bandwidth of movement, and then the kind of one side doing this, and that's more on the
Yeah.
pattern. And it's a way of organizing all of this in a more concise way. And it's, to me, it's like this concise pattern thing is almost it's trying to make the process of moving throughout space forward, walking, as efficient as possible. And this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff obviously feeds into that, but this other stuff allows me, when I'm not walking, when I'm sitting on the ground or when I'm doing exercises, to be able to access all these different positions in a much easier way.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
there's something very unique about the walking that requires this one side impansion, other side expansion and exchange.
I'm going to explore that sensation in myself
Yeah.
because that's an interesting thing. And I
And
can see the twin towers, one compressing and the
yes,
other responding.
it gets incredibly interesting when you add breathing into it, because the side that you're impanding when you breathe, in PRI they talk about different um, areas of the lung tissue. So if I impand properly, on one side, the front half of that, the front of my chest wall is now compressed and closed. So when I breathe in, excuse me, the air will go into the opposite side and into the back of this side,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because the ribs are internally rotating and they're moving back, they're coiling backwards. Which is why when Leonid, however long ago, first talked to us about I forget how he said it, but developing the
Dorsalization.
that immediately made sense to me, because for years that's what I've been trying to do with people through breathing, is to get the breath to expand into the dorsal,
Mm.
because we're all nowadays compressed dorsally and pushed forward. And when you see people breathe, it's like, and so for years I've been doing this to get the back to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I realized that there are there are situations where that's not the only thing you need to do more than that, because the body isn't always necessarily prepared to handle that stuff because the tension is so disrupted, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And we have to go, but
Yeah,
just something that I would also like to hear in your discussion. You comment something. You said the first phrase, I think, this the skin work, or the skin tough, or the strength,
yeah,
skin strength, or something like that. And uh, I would like to discuss what is a strong skin. And a strong skin, I agree.
yeah,
I think that you agree with me. It's a pliable one. It's
yes,
not a rigid
yeah, yeah.
one, but it's something that when we use strong, I fall into the thing instead of
I think stable is a. I think metastable is probably the better.
metastable. Yeah, super stability. Yeah, metastable. Yeah,
Super
yeah.
super stable skin.
Okay, I understand. I understand.
Yeah,
And another thing is that where do you see? Because I have another presentation that I want to build regarding CKCs. Where where do you see the component of closed kinematic chaining in that torso movement from
yeah.
the legs, like in walking?
I what I think, or I've had this visual for a while. There's a picture. I can't remember now if it's in Graham's book or a research paper. I hold on. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I can be a couple minutes to late to my client. um, there is a picture that's stuck in my head a long time ago, and it's a picture of a cell,
Hmm.
and it's talking about how the cell moves around the extracellular matrix, and it talks about those I think they call them integrins, the fibers that
Yeah, 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 yeah.
come out of the cell that are continuous with the cellular matrix within. And it
Hmm.
showed the cell, uh, it showed one corner of the cell latching onto the surface of something.
Hmm.
And it showed the fibers within the cell uh, converging towards that point, and it showed the cell, the other end of the cell that had previously been attached to the environment, dislodging itself. And so you see one corner of the cell that just attached converging, the other side's coming apart. So you can picture all like the fibers within the cell in this corner are getting closer together and this side's getting further apart. And then as soon as it lets go back here, everything within the cell gets pulled towards this new point of contact.
Hmm.
And so what I'm visualizing with the CKCs is in the walking that you just mentioned is whatever foot just hit the ground, the CKCs from the ground contact, the foot contact up through that side of the body, it's just one giant vortex of a CKC being pulled towards the foot. And what I'm now realizing is the muscle the layout of the muscles that we see, which is all torsional, it's causing the CKCs to be torsional. It's like here's my foot and here's the rest of my body up top, and as the CKCs are being pulled towards the foot, there's a
Mm-hmm.
chirality to it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then that happens, and then the other foot, if I had a third arm, the other foot would swing, and then that foot hits, and then so this is now happening on the other side, and then this happens.
Yeah, there's a counter twist on the other.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
And what PRI has taught me in my experiential experience with people is that this doesn't happen easily on the left side as easily as the right.
Mm. I have to check with my clients because I have many of them with twists.
Yes.
Uh,
What you'll
uh,
find what you'll find is that um, the ability for that person to get their center of mass to shift over to the left, over the left foot, as the left pelvis, or sorry, as the pelvis turns to the left,
mhm.
is very challenged. And they'll find a lot of ways to compensate, whatever that word means now, but they won't be able to do that like they do on the right. And
Okay.
Leonid talks a lot about in some of his video analysis of the ability for the femur, the thigh to be able to rotate one way and the pelvis the other, this disassociation. What
Mhm.
you'll find is, like, when I shift to the right, my pelvis turns to the right and my right thigh can turn in. A lot of people, when they go to the left and they try to turn the pelvis to the left, the thigh turns out with it.
Mm.
And they actually still, their body is still oriented to the right, even as they're going to the left. They
Okay.
struggle to let go of this impansion right chirality. They
Okay.
struggle to let that go and get to the left.
Okay.
I gotta go though.
I see. Okay, good, good.
To be
We
continued.
have to talk later.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. See you. Nice weekend.